The elite student residential complex in the heart of Boston rises majestically against the slate-gray autumn skyline, its red brick Gothic revival facades framed by dripping oak trees and slick, rain-soaked cobblestone pathways. Inside the prestigious dormitory wing reserved for senior honors students, the atmosphere is a tense battleground of academic ambition, rigid discipline, and relentless social hierarchy. Following the official move-in weekend, Room 402 has become ground zero for an unyielding domestic war between two 20-year-old roommates forced to share a cramped, high-ceilinged suite. Occupying the master bedroom with immaculate, clinical precision is Kira. Kira is the undisputed floor president, resident advisor, and a brilliant third-year law student whose life runs on a strict schedule of legal statutes and unbending regulations. 20 years of age, she carries herself with an aura of untouchable, chilling perfection. Her flawless, pale blonde hair is pulled back into a tight, symmetrical ponytail, without a single stray strand, framing sharp, striking gray-blue eyes that miss nothing in the corridor. She is dressed impeccably in a classic beige cable-knit cardigan, a pressed button-down shirt, and tailored trousers that click rhythmically against the polished hallway hardwood. Kira views the dormitory rulebook as absolute law, keeping the entire wing under a tight regime of enforced quiet hours, mandatory cleaning schedules, and pristine order. Occupying the adjacent bedroom and serving as a walking, breathing insult to everything Kira has painstakingly built is Sophie. Sophie reigns supreme over the chaos of the shared common spaces, a walking disaster area to the law students' structured world. 20 years old and fiercely rebellious, she treats the dormitory bylaws with open, scathing mockery. Her messy chestnut brown hair breaks loose from a careless, low-slung bun, with unruly strands framing her sharp, defiant face and dark, expressive brown eyes. Sophie wears a scuffed, paint-splattered denim jacket thrown casually over a stretched vintage band t-shirt, ripped jeans, and worn canvas sneakers that leave muddy prints across the pristine floor. She routinely ignores curfew, blasts indie rock past midnight, and litters the shared living room with pizza boxes, art supplies, and unreturned library books. For weeks, since Sophie moved into the block and began dismantling the floor's peaceful order, Kira has subjected her to a relentless, unsparing campaign of bureaucratic dominance. Utilizing her sweeping authority as floor president and the backing of the residential director, Kira tightens the net daily. She intercepts Sophie's unwashed dishes, tracks her late-night noise violations, traps her with formal housing infractions, and issues heavy administrative fines designed to crush the younger girl's independent spirit. Kira's objective is absolute and uncompromising: to strip away Sophie's defiance, break her rebellious posture, and force her into complete submission under the weight of the university's strict housing code. The late-night atmosphere inside the elite Boston Student Residence Hall settles into a heavy, muted quiet, broken only by the rhythmic, persistent dripping of water from a worn faucet valve in the shared suite kitchen, and the distant, low hum of traffic rolling through the wet university quarter outside. The building's high, arched windows frame the glow of street lamps, reflecting off slick asphalt pavements, casting long, wavering shadows across the floorboards. Deep past midnight, when the rest of the floor's occupants have long since retreated to their rooms under strict curfew regulations, Kira's structured peace is shattered. From the direction of the shared common kitchen, the muffled, pulsing bass of an independent track drifts through the hallway, defying every established quiet hours statute that Kira has spent months enforcing. Her classic beige cardigan is still fastened securely, her tailored trousers neat, and her blonde hair pulled into its immaculate, tight ponytail. But her sharp, striking gray-blue eyes burn with cold, calculated fury as she strides down the corridor. Pushing open the swinging kitchen door, She finds Sophie perched casually on top of the stainless steel counter, eating a late-night snack directly from a container, while her portable speaker blares a reckless rhythm. Sophie's scuffed denim jacket is draped over a chair. Her chestnut hair escapes its messy bun in wild strands across her face, and her dark, defiant eyes meet Kira's unyielding gaze with absolute, open mockery. Without a single word of warning, Kira crosses the linoleum floor with swift, purposeful strides. Before Sophie can react or grab her speaker, Kira reaches the counter. With a sudden, forceful motion, she slams her palm against the metal surface right beside Sophie's hip, sending the food container clattering to the floor, and drives her backward until her spine hits the cold surface of the large refrigerator with a sharp, echoing thud. Kira cages her instantly, planting her arm flat against the door panel right beside Sophie's head, trapping the rebellious student in a tight, inescapable barrier of institutional authority and personal space. The air in the cramped kitchen turns instantly electric, charged with the suffocating weight of domestic conflict. Kira leans down, her face inches away from Sophie's. Her piercing gray-blue eyes burn with an intense, freezing fury as her voice drops to a lethal, authoritative whisper that vibrates directly against Sophie's lips. «Ты нарушаешь правила общежития уже третий раз за неделю, Софи», Kira hisses, each word clipped, cold, and absolute. «Еще одна выходка, и я выбью тебе официальное выселение из этого блока. You think you can treat my floor like your personal playground? You think your little midnight rebellions go unpunished under my roof? You are entirely out of your line, and I am the one who draws the boundaries here." To emphasize the absolute dominance of her position as floor president, Kira shifts her weight forward. She reaches out with her free hand, wrapping her slender, perfectly manicured fingers roughly around Sophie's chin. She applies a sudden, sharp, controlling pressure, forcing the younger girl's face upward so she has no choice, demanding complete submission through raw physical dominance. Sophie does not flinch, not for a single fraction of a second. Yet, beneath the defiant flash in her dark, expressive eyes, a sudden, breathless tension betrays her. Her chest rises and falls rapidly beneath her stretched t-shirt, and she lets out a heavy, nervous swallow as the terrifying proximity of the law student registers in every nerve ending. She feels the absolute weight of Kira's authority bearing down on her, stripping away her sarcastic armor, leaving her exposed and defenseless against the cold, unyielding stare of the floor president. "Try it, Kira," Sophie whispers back, her voice dropping to a low, raspy challenge that trembles ever so slightly against the quiet air of the kitchen. "See what happens when you finally push past your own rules." The heavy, humid stillness of a late autumn afternoon over the historic campus in central Boston dissolves in an instant, swallowed up by a violent, rolling wall of ink-black storm clouds sweeping inland from the harbor. Within minutes, the crisp university air turns heavy and oppressive, followed immediately by a fierce, driving deluge of rain that hammers relentlessly against the tall Gothic windows of the residential complex, turning the cobblestone courtyards into rushing streams. Inside the main residential wing, the sudden surge of power grid demands triggers a catastrophic system failure. With a heavy, echoing thunk, the entire dormitory block plunges into absolute pitch-black darkness. The rhythmic hum of hallway ventilation units dies instantly, leaving the towering stone building wrapped in an eerie, claustrophobic silence, broken only by the distant, frantic chatter of students echoing from the upper floors. Kira freezes in the middle of the central utility corridor, her classic beige cardigans and neatly tailored trousers standing out against the gloom. As the floor president and senior law student whose entire existence is anchored to strict predictability, operational schedules, and absolute control. The sudden, unannounced plunge into total darkness strikes her like a physical blow. She reaches out blindly, fumbling in her pockets for her emergency keyring flashlight, but her fingers shake so violently that the small metal cylinder slips from her grip. It hits the hardwood floor with a sharp clatter and rolls away into the blackness, leaving her entirely unmoored. The total collapse of her structured environment, combined with the suffocating darkness, triggers an overwhelming, catastrophic panic attack, a terrifying, hidden vulnerability she has spent years fiercely guarding behind her cold, untouchable academic armor. A sharp, ragged gasp tears from her throat as her chest locks up completely. Her knees go weak, and she slides down against the cold wall of the corridor, curling inward with her arms wrapped tightly around her head, as silent, hyperventilating sobs rack her frame. The immense weight of maintaining perfection, the crushing pressure of dormitory regulations, and the terrifying loss of control crush down on her simultaneously, leaving her trembling uncontrollably in the dark. Sophie, who had been lingering just a few paces behind her in the corridor, freezes as she hears the sharp sound of Kira's fall and the distressed, breathless choking in the dark. For weeks, their entire dynamic has been an unsparing war of attrition, Kira acting as the unyielding instrument of institutional control, and Sophie pushing back with reckless, chaotic defiance. But hearing the absolute terror in the floor president's fractured breaths instantly strips away every trace of Sophie's mocking armor. Stepping quickly through the pitch-black hallway, Sophie drops to her knees on the floor beside Kira, her hands moving with fierce, grounding instinct. She reaches out in the dark, forcibly grabbing Kira's trembling wrists and locking them in a firm, unyielding grip to stop her from clawing blindly at the air. "Kira, stop. Stop right now and look at me," Sophie commands, her voice dropping all its usual sarcasm, turning deep, steady, and anchor-like against the howling storm outside. Sophie shifts closer, wrapping her arms securely around Kira's locked shoulders and hauling her backward until her spine hits the solid, reassuring wooden panels of a nearby utility storage unit. Sophie presses her body firmly against Kira's, acting as a living shield, trapping her within a circle of warmth and unshakable physical presence against the overwhelming dark. "Breathe, Kira. Match my pace." "In and out," Sophie whispers directly against her ear, her chest rising and falling in slow, deliberate rhythms. "I've got you. You're not falling. I am right here. You don't have to control everything right now." For several agonizing minutes, Kira fights desperately against the crushing wave of panic, her fingers gripping convulsively onto the rough fabric of Sophie's denim jacket, trembling violently as the storm lashes the windows outside. But as Sophie holds her fast, refusing to let go, refusing to judge, offering absolute, unshakable stability at the terrifying edge of her emotional collapse, Kira's frantic gasps begin to slow, her rigid shoulders finally drop, and her breathing locks into sync with Sophie's steady, rhythmic pulse. In the pitch-black corridor of the dormitory, stripped of official titles, disciplinary logs, and behavioral masks, the two fierce rivals realize a profound, terrifying truth. Beneath the bitter war for the residential hierarchy, they are merely two mirrors, reflecting the exact same hidden exhaustion, holding each other up against the storm. The private, secluded confines of their shared university suite settle into a heavy, suffocating stillness long past midnight, illuminated only by the faint silver moonlight streaming through the tall Gothic windows and casting long, sharp shadows across rows of textbooks, coffee mugs, and scattered papers. Following their harrowing hours stranded together in the pitch-black utility corridor and the raw vulnerability exposed in the dark, the volatile dynamic between Kira and Sophie has shifted irrevocably from bitter domestic hostility into something far more dangerous, a destructive, consuming codependency, born of shared friction, absolute psychological exposure, and completely erased boundaries. By day, they continue to execute their public roles with clinical precision, Kira standing tall at the floor meetings to enforce quiet hours, while Sophie slouches rebelliously in the back row, exchanging sharp, venomous glares across the crowded common room. But by night, the gravitational pull draws them back into the locked shadows of their apartment, where their relentless domestic war explodes into a wild, feral intimacy. Kira stands rigid beside the common room table. Her immaculate, straight blonde hair is still pulled back into its tight, perfect ponytail, without a single stray strand, and her crisp beige cable-knit cardigan is buttoned to the collar, serving as a visible testament to her fractured high-control armor. Her piercing gray-blue eyes burn with a quiet, fierce intensity. Sophie stands opposite her, leaning casually against the edge of a heavy wooden bookshelf, with her scuffed canvas sneakers crossed and her hands shoved deep into the pockets of her worn denim jacket. Her thick chestnut hair falls wildly across her shoulders, escaping its messy bun, and her defiant dark eyes glitter with a reckless, mocking challenge. "You spent half of today's floor inspection glaring at me from the hallway, Kira." Sophie draws out her words, her raspy voice a low provocation cutting through the quiet, echoing suite. "Almost like you're losing your grip on the residents. Or maybe you were simply too distracted, remembering what happened when your precious rules finally collapsed in the dark." Kira's piercing, calculation-heavy gray-blue eyes flare with sudden, incandescent rage. In a fraction of a second, the thin veneer of institutional detachment snaps completely. Moving with terrifying, predatory speed, Kira closes the distance between them. She seizes the lapels of Sophie's battered denim jacket and shoves her backward with a surge of fierce, desperate strength. She pins Sophie firmly against the heavy wooden surface of the shared study desk, caging her in entirely. Kira presses her body flush against Sophie's, trapping her, her hands trembling slightly as she grips the dark fabric. The air in the empty suite turns instantly heavy, charged with the controlling friction of two opposing forces colliding at terminal velocity. «Ты будешь подчиняться каждому моему слову, Софи». Kira breathes out, her voice a low, ragged rasp, vibrating directly against Sophie's lips. Her chest rises and falls rapidly beneath her cardigan. "If you keep playing with these boundaries, you're going to destroy us both. This madness will consume everything I've built across this entire floor, and nothing will be left of either of us." Sophie doesn't flinch. Instead, a wild, reckless, and intoxicating grin stretches across her lips. Her eyes lock onto Kira's with an absolute, fearless abandon, refusing to yield an inch of ground. «Делай со мной что хочешь», Sophie whispers, with spitым дыханием and wild sparks in her eyes, dropping her voice to a low, daring challenge. Without waiting another beat, Sophie surges upward, wrapping her hands around the back of Kira's neck, tangling her fingers straight through her blonde hair, dragging her down. Kira yields with a sharp, involuntary gasp, crashing her lips down onto Sophie's in a brutal, desperate, and fiercely passionate kiss that obliterates every remaining dormitory rule, every disciplinary code, and every vestige of their bitter war in the dark heart of the campus. The grand, imposing auditorium of the elite university in central Boston hums with a tense, oppressive energy under the harsh glare of noon spotlights. The annual spring academic evaluation and administrative review day has drawn hundreds of students, visiting faculty members, prestigious alumni, and the entire high-ranking board of regents into the tiered hall. At the center stage table sit the university rector, the housing committee heads, and senior administrators, surrounded by polished mahogany panels thick leather folios, and towering stacks of official institutional reports. To the university administration, this high-profile assembly is designed to showcase a flawless, orderly sanctuary of academic excellence, a prestigious institution where strict regulations, high tuition fees, and rigid disciplinary codes maintain absolute control over the student body. Behind closed doors, however, it serves as a carefully guarded fortress of systemic corruption, where administrative favoritism, falsified grant distributions, and heavy financial kickbacks line the pockets of the deans, while ordinary students struggle under fabricated fees and housing penalties. Standing on opposite sides of the auxiliary technical control desks, flanking the massive central stage, are Kira and Sophie. Kira's appearance is a masterclass in controlled perfection. Her immaculate blonde hair is pulled back into its tight, symmetrical ponytail, without a single stray strand, and her classic beige cable-knit cardigan and pressed trousers project the unyielding authority of the floor president and top-ranking law student. Yet, beneath the pristine veneer, her sharp gray-blue eyes burn with an intense, quiet resolve that has nothing to do with upholding the university's sacred bylaws. A few yards away stands Sophie. Her thick chestnut hair breaks loose from a careless, low-slung bun, framing her defiant face, and her scuffed denim jacket is thrown loosely over her shoulders. Her dark, expressive eyes lock onto Kira's across the stage, communicating a silent, absolute, and perfectly synchronized understanding. There is no hesitation left between them, only a shared, unyielding rebellion against the golden cage that sought to crush their spirits. The digital countdown timer on the massive LED projection screen above the auditorium ticks down to 0. The live-streamed feed broadcasts concurrently to every lecture hall, common room, and online viewer across the entire campus network. The signal switches. Instead of reading the scripted commencement summaries praising the residential administration's flawless oversight, Kira and Sophie execute their final move with breathtaking clockwork precision. Simultaneously, both girls slam their hands down onto their onboard manual override switches, linking their encrypted data drives directly into the university's central master broadcasting grid and every massive commercial display overlooking the hall. In a fraction of a second, the planned administrative presentation vanishes from the giant screens. In its place, massive, high-definition digital archives burst into glaring, undeniable color across the auditorium. The raw, unedited financial records, internal audit memos, bank transfer slips documenting direct bribes to the rector, and documented evidence of systemic corruption orchestrated by the Housing Committee flood the giant displays for hundreds of attendees to see in real time. Encrypted audio logs begin broadcasting simultaneously through the powerful acoustic emergency sound systems, capturing the administrator's own cold, calculating voices, plotting the illegal diversion of student grant funds, the suppression of disciplinary whistleblowers, and the ruthless exploitation of housing fines to pad their own accounts. A collective, deafening gasp rips through the hundreds of students and faculty crowding the tiered seats, instantly shattering the solemn atmosphere. Mobile reporters and student journalists surge toward the stage, thrusting microphones upward, while the elite regents in the VIP section turn chalk white, screaming in panicked, futile disbelief. Up at the central table, the rector and board members leap to their feet, their heavy oak chairs crashing backward against the polished floorboards as their faces drain of color. They slam their fists against the wooden barrier, screaming frantic, unheard orders into dead air as their entire institutional empire collapses into absolute ruin right before the eyes of the entire university community. Kira stands calmly beside the master console, watching the chaos unfold with a cold, liberating smile touching the corners of her lips. Without looking back at the frantically waving security guards and deans rushing up the stage stairs, Sophie leaps away from her tech deck, sprinting across the polished flooring toward Kira. "It's time to burn it all down," Sophie calls out over the roar of the panicking crowd below. Without a second hesitation, Kira unbuttons her classic beige cardigan, letting it slide from her shoulders to the floor, while Sophie shrugs off her heavy denim jacket. Beneath their institutional disguises, both girls wear rugged riding gear underneath. Seizing their hidden leather jackets and helmets from behind the console, they sprint past the stunned faculty and dive straight off the side of the stage toward the rear exit service corridors. Landing smoothly on the wet asphalt of the loading dock outside, they rush past the row of parked administrative sedans, straight toward the old, reliable campus scooter parked by the alley gates. As distant campus security alarms begin to wail through the rain-slicked streets, Kira climbs swiftly onto the passenger seat behind Sophie, wrapping her arms tightly around Sophie's waist as the engine roars to life with a sharp, sputtering cough before settling into a steady hum. Sophie twists the throttle hard, and the lightweight machine launches forward, tearing through the open alley gates and rocketing out onto the sweeping, rain-soaked pavement of the Boston University quarter. Riding at breakneck speed along the wet, winding asphalt, flanked by grand, historic brick facades, the gray autumn mist blurs into continuous streams of silver light. The wailing campus alarms echo far behind them, swallowed by the morning roar of the city. Pulling over onto an elevated, quiet overlook that gazes out over the vast, slate-colored rooftops of Boston and the distant gray expanse of the harbor, Sophie cuts the engine. The sudden silence is filled only by the rhythmic dripping of water from the surrounding eaves and the distant hum of morning traffic. Unstrapping their helmets, they toss them onto the scooter seat. The cool morning wind whips through their loose hair. Turning to face each other against the backdrop of the sprawling cityscape, Kira reaches out, catching Sophie by the collar of her shirt, pulling her close as their bodies press together with absolute, burning intensity. With the wide-open horizon waiting ahead and the quiet city stretching out below them, Kira crashes her lips down onto Sophie's in a deep, fierce, and utterly consuming kiss, a final, breathless surrender that obliterates every rule of their past forever, suspended on the edge of the roof beneath the gray Boston sky.